All right, I have been told not to vlog tonight, but I have snuck into the bathroom to do this. Okay, I'm vlogging tonight because who knows what tomorrow brings. I have read the Eric Coomer lawsuit against Sidney Powell, Giuliani, OANN, Newsmax, and others. The lawsuit highlights a principle that Abraham Lincoln once wrote about way back in the day. Don't allege that which you need not allege, lest you be required to prove that which you cannot prove. Okay, first things first, I am not Mossad. Mossad does not vlog from the inside of a bathroom. Second things, when you allege something, you better make sure you have the evidence to prove it. And when you allege certain damning things, you better make sure you have the evidence to prove those things. The more damning they are, the harder the evidence has to be. It doesn't matter if you think the elections were flawed or unflawed, constitutional or unconstitutional. When you make public allegations impugning companies with more money than you, individuals backed by companies with more money than you better make sure you have the actual evidence to back up those allegations. So, here's the thing. Way back in the day, when people were saying Dominion was responsible for X, Y, and Z, when Dominion didn't come back and sue, people were saying, by virtue of the fact that Dominion and others are not suing for defamation, it means that the allegations are true. At the time, I said that's sort of weak reasoning. First of all, there can be 1,000 reasons why people don't want to sue, one of which is it's not good to sue. It costs money, it takes time, and generally speaking, nobody comes out a winner. That being said, they didn't sue. But now they're suing. They went on the offense and started sending letters of demand, demanding retractions from seemingly Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, and others. Here's the other thing. Don't sue because lawsuits are 50-50 regardless in the best of circumstances. Now we are at a later stage. We have seen the Trump campaign and we have seen Trump and other pro-Trump lawsuits dismissed one after the other in front of courts. Now that Dominion sees that lawsuits have been dismissed one after the other, they might feel more empowered to sue. What's going to happen now? They've issued demands for retraction from a number of sources. Seemingly, which one was it? It wasn't Fox News. I think it was Newsmax, which basically issued an unsolicited fact check of their own original story saying, it seems that we didn't have the evidence to back up a lot of the allegations we initially made ourselves way back in the day. Okay, now Dominion, having seen the way the courts have dealt with Trump's lawsuits, for good or for bad, for right or for wrong, and I happen to think for wrong, but they've seen the way the courts have dealt with Trump's lawsuits, dismissed them one after the other. Am I getting busted? I'm not getting busted. Dismissed them the one after the other on standing, on mootness, on latches, whatever. They've seen the way the courts have dealt with them. What do they think now? Now they feel empowered. So they issue demands for retraction from news outlets, individuals, knowing they're not going to issue those retractions, except a few did. Now they've sued, not Dominion per se, Eric Coomer, who is the director of marketing and security, something along those lines at Dominion. He is suing Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, Newsmax, OAN, and a slew of Rudy Giuliani and a slew of others. I've read the lawsuit, and it's a damning lawsuit to read. I don't like it in the sense that people could have done things differently to make the points that they wanted to make, but it's a damning lawsuit. They have sued OAN, Newsmax, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, Giuliani. My first reaction is typically lawyers benefit from a sort of immunity. When you're the lawyer, you can't get sued for defamation just for availing yourself to the rights of your client. The problem is, some of these lawsuits that were filed by Lynn Wood personally. So he no longer gets to benefit from this lawyer immunity that he might have otherwise been able to claim. What else? They have made very public allegations about Dominion. Where was I going with this? It's a tough one. This is a tough one. They have made public allegations of Dominion, targeted principles of Dominion, and this is alleged in the lawsuits. A bunch of people basically going off of the reporting of one individual who made arguably substantiable claims, but probably not. And then OANN reports on it. And then Sidney Powell comes out publicly and says, we have evidence of X, Y, and Z, when they don't. Sidney Powell technically is a lawyer representing a client and technically will benefit from immunity because even if your client makes certain allegations which could be defamatory, typically the lawyer is not held liable for the defamatory statements of their client unless the lawyer makes them in willful disregard of the truth. Notwithstanding the fact that the lawyers can't be sued for defamation, sometimes clients can be sued for defamation. It's not because you file something in a lawsuit that you're immune from a defamation lawsuit. And this is the interesting thing. You can make allegations in a lawsuit and a reporter can report on those allegations and be immune from defamation by reporting on a lawsuit that has been filed, but the person having filed the lawsuit is not immune from defamation for having filed that lawsuit. So there were some lawsuits filed alleging an array of things. By and large, those lawsuits have not been proven. They have not been proven for a number of reasons, by and large because they have not gotten to evidentiary hearings. Okay, so conceivably, the accusations can be proven in due time in court if they ever get to an evidentiary hearing. We haven't gotten there yet. They've been dismissed on their face for other reasons, standing latches, etc. Now Eric Coomer, not Dominion, has sued a bunch of people for defamation and other damages. Eric Coomer is a principal who has an easier time making a claim for defamation than Dominion as a company, and is now suing for defamation. Now, problem is, suing for defamation, you have to prove that the allegedly defamatory statements were in fact false. So Coomer is in fact going to have to prove that these statements that he alleges are defamatory were in fact false. This is a double-edged sword. Suing is always a double-edged sword because when you sue, especially for defamation, you have to prove that the statements were false. So Coomer is going to have to prove that the allegedly defamatory statements were in fact false. That's going to open up Coomer, Dominion, to some form of discovery, in theory, if they ever get there. The defendants can prove that ultimate defense to defamation is the truthfulness of the statements. So the defendants can prove the statements were true. In theory, suing opens up to discovery on both ends. So the defendants can now depose, examine, discover, try to prove that their allegations were that their allegations were true, or at the very least that they were not false. So it's a reversal of sorts of the burden of proof. Coomer, who is now suing for defamation, has to prove that these statements uttered by the defendants were false. He's got to prove that. It's going to open for discovery. The defendants can say that we can prove that the statements were not false on their face, but sufficiently true that we could have reported the way we did, and so on. The lawsuit itself alleges that there was one guy named Altman who made some statements which were utterly unsubstantiated. I say this without judgment. Just a guy saying, I heard. Don't know who the individual was on this phone call that I heard. I heard someone whose name was Eric saying, no way Trump is going to effing win the election. Then you've got OANN, Newsmax, and others repeating these statements. Unsubstantiated, unevidenced, although maybe they have their evidence and maybe this is a long-run game. The individual, Coomer, who's just a principal of this company, was targeted and suffered specific damages, allegedly. Doxed, threatened. You're reading through the lawsuit, suffered the worst of the worst. And he's going to have a claim now, regardless of whether or not Dominion itself could be conceptually guilty of something. This guy, Coomer, is now suing for damages because his life has been upended by virtue of the fact that he was targeted by one individual, repeated by news outlets over and over again. And in a way, nobody's going to like hearing this, it's similar to the Nicholas Salmon story where you have one news outlet reporting something and then the frenzy of other outlets reporting on it as though it's fact, spinning on this wheel of inaccurate reporting in the first place. That's what happened to Coomer to some extent. Maybe there is evidence to show that these things Sidney Powell said about Coomer are true. Maybe. And maybe it's going to come out in court. From an election perspective, if and when or ever it comes out in court, it's not going to be for this election. It might be well down the line. It may never be proven. It may be settled, whatever. But as far as it goes to aiding and assisting and contributing to this election lawsuits, probably not going to happen. Maybe it will. But if it doesn't, and you have a case where an individual ran a totally unverified and unverifiable story, which was rerun by other news outlets, OANN, Newsmax, repeated by Sidney Powell, Giuliani, in front of people, and that resulted in an individual being doxxed, threatened, harassed, suffering damages just by virtue of the fact that he is a director of marketing and security at an election company. It's reminiscent of Sandman, except for the fact that we're not dealing with a minor as we were in Sandman. And what's going to happen at the end of the day? I mean, this litigation costs money. Dominion is a big company, deep pockets, suing OANN and Newsmax, which are smaller companies and don't have deep pockets. Now, admittedly, they are lumped together with defendants who have bigger pockets and deeper pockets, and you're not going to get a judgment against one of the defendants without getting a judgment against all of the defendants. But this costs money, this takes time, and the resolution of this lawsuit is not going to happen between now and January 6th. So you're going to have, like everyone said from the beginning, if the stories were false, why wouldn't Dominion be suing? Dominion, through its principals, are now suing. We're not going to have a resolution before the end of 2020, before inauguration, and now people are not going to be able to say, well, if it were so defamatory, why aren't they suing? They're suing now. And now the question is going to be, can they prove that the statements were false? Can they prove that they were uttered with actual malice? Although with respect to Coomer, who's an individual, a private individual, employee of the company, he may not be a public figure for the purposes of requiring the actual malice criteria. So he may have an easier time proving defamation in that he's not a public figure. But one way or another, we're not going to have a resolution for the end of 2020 or for the beginning of 2021. And what you're going to have right now is a company who knows it has the backing of the court. They've seen the way the courts have reacted. They know they're not on the side of Trump. This company knows that it can now sue, and by and large, maybe 9 out of 10 times, it's going to have favorable judges who are not pro-Trump and who are pro-establishment, pro-confirming the process because of the extent of which Dominion is already in the United States, the extent to which it's already infiltrated or operates within the election process in the United States, and they know that they're going to have the benefit of the courts, by and large. And so, maybe they get past discovery, maybe they get into an actual trial, but they know the vast majority of the time, Dominion is going to have the institutional judiciary on their side, in as much as they've seen the institutional judiciary not support Trump. Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be amazing. It's going to be interesting. I hear silence in the other room, which is probably the worst thing for a dad who has said he's going to the bathroom 10 minutes ago. That is the situation. I'll do a vlog on the actual lawsuit itself because it's an interesting lawsuit. It's pretty well drafted. There's some inflammatory rhetoric and there's some self-serving drafting in there. But by and large, if you were to substitute Coomer's name with Sandman, it could operate and apply mutatis mutandis, save and except for the fact that Sandman was a minor, Coomer's a major working for a company, and save and except for the fact that people probably think Coomer is guilty and they don't think Sandman is guilty, although flip that around, the other party thought the exact same thing the other time. It's a very well-drafted lawsuit. It shows at the very least, as of now, the factually incorrect statements that were made, repeated, that led to damages, and the only question is going to be, were they sufficiently true? Were they true? Were they in fact false and people knew it, or were reckless in not verifying the information that they were repeating and repeating on the news outlets day in and day out over the course of a month and a half, not just to discredit Dominion, because that might be fair game, but to single target an individual and effectively ruin his life. That's what we're going to see. So all that to say, to be continued. If you like my videos and like my content, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. More important than any of that, take care of yourselves. Check in on friends and family. It's Christmas. Tomorrow, as of the time of shooting this, it might be today as of the time of publishing. But that's it. Now you know your vlog. Peace out.